You are hiding something. Right now. Not from me. From yourself. There is a version of you that you have never let anyone see. Not your father. Not the woman who thinks she knows you. Not the men who call you their friend. Because the one time you got close to showing it, something in your chest slammed a door shut so fast you didn't even feel it happen. You just felt fine again. Composed. In control. That was never control. That was the cover-up, and you have gotten so good at performing it that even you have started to believe the performance. I know what you tell yourself when you're alone with it at 2 in the morning. That you're just being careful. Strategic. That you're playing the long game while other men act recklessly. That's the story. Here's the fact underneath the story. You are running from a single question, and you have built your entire adult life as the architecture of that escape. What if they finally see what I already suspect is true about me? You've never said that sentence out loud. You're not going to like that I just did. Sit with that discomfort for a second instead of reaching for the next distraction, because that discomfort is the only honest thing that has happened to you today. 5 years. Take the last 5 years of your life and lay them out end to end. The job you didn't apply for. The woman you didn't call back a second time out of some preemptive flinch. The room you didn't walk into. The idea you sat on until someone else built it and got rich off the exact thought you had first. Every one of those was a decision. You told yourself each one was made by your judgment, weighed carefully, considered from every angle. It wasn't. It was made half a second before your judgment even arrived, by something faster and older, and you have spent 5 years signing your name to choices you didn't actually make. You have been a ghostwriter for your own fear, and you have never once asked for credit, because some part of you already suspected the work wasn't yours to be proud of. That is not a metaphor. That is your nervous system, and it has been driving while you sat in the passenger seat calling yourself the driver, congratulating yourself on a route you never chose, arriving at destinations you would never have picked if anyone had actually asked you. Here is the part almost nobody says to you directly, because it requires someone to look at you and not blink. Fear was never your enemy. You could survive fear alone 1,000 times over, and you have, more times than you have bothered to count. What is actually going to end you, not kill you, end you, hollow you out into a man who watched his own life happen from a safe distance through a pane of glass he built himself, is your relationship to it. The specific, learned, entirely reversible habit of treating a feeling in your chest as though it were a verdict on your worth as a man, delivered by a court with final authority, when in truth it was never anything more than a rough draft, written in a hurry, by a part of you that has never once been asked to defend its conclusions out loud. I am not here to tell you to stop being afraid. That has never worked on you, and it was never going to. Telling a man to stop being afraid is like telling a smoke detector to stop going off in a house that's on fire. The detector isn't the problem. The detector was never the problem. It is doing exactly what it was built to do, and the fact that it fires at a birthday candle the same way it fires at a burning roof is not a flaw in the detector. It is a flaw in the calibration, and calibration can be corrected. Tonight, I'm going to show you the actual mechanism. The same one 3 men used 2,000 years ago to walk directly into the worst things that can happen to a human being, without letting the wiring in their chest make the decision for them, and without pretending, even once, that the wiring had gone quiet. 7 laws. Listen slowly. One of these is going to land somewhere you didn't want touched tonight, and you will know exactly which one the moment it happens, because your body will react before your mind agrees to. Law 1. Fear is not a fact. It's a verdict you never cross-examined. Here is the sentence that should genuinely disturb you. The event you're avoiding has no terror built into it. None. The confrontation, the rejection, the failure. Inert, until your mind attaches a judgment to it faster than conscious thought can intercept, faster than you could ever catch it even if you were watching closely, which you never are, because nobody taught you to watch for it in the first place. And because that judgment arrives before you can see it happening, it feels like fact. It feels like the event itself is dangerous, wired directly into the nature of the thing rather than layered onto it afterward by a mind that has been making the same mistake for years without correction. You have never once questioned this, because questioning it requires catching something that moves faster than your own awareness, and most men go their entire lives without ever trying. Now sit with this. If the judgment is running the show, and you've never once cross-examined it, then every major decision of your adult life has been handed to a witness that was never sworn in, never questioned, never checked against reality, never asked to produce a single shred of evidence for the claims it has been making about you since you were old enough to feel shame. You've been living inside a verdict issued by a court you didn't even know was in session, presided over by a version of yourself that was frightened, young, and wrong about almost everything, and you never once appealed the ruling. Epictetus said men are disturbed not by events, but by their opinions of events. He said this while enslaved. A man with less control over his actual circumstances than you will ever have in your life, which strips away the only excuse you were about to reach for, the one where you tell yourself your situation is different, your stakes are higher, your risk is somehow more real than the risk faced by a man whose body could be broken at another man's whim and who built an entire philosophy of freedom from inside that exact condition. He wasn't describing a technique for comfortable men sitting in comfortable rooms. He was describing the only leverage a man has left when everything else has been taken from him, and you have more leverage available to you right now, tonight, than he ever did in his entire life, and you are not using it. You are letting it sit unused while you call yourself powerless. Picture the last time your thumb hovered over send, on something that could have actually changed your life. A message, an application, a confession you'd rehearsed 100 times and never once delivered. Your heart rate climbed. Your palms changed temperature. Your throat tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the actual physical situation you were in, sitting safely, alone, holding a piece of glass and metal that has never once, in the history of its existence, physically harmed anyone by simply displaying words. That is not a rational response to risk. That is a body responding to a threat that was never there, because somewhere along the way, discomfort got quietly reclassified as danger, and nobody told you, and you never checked the file, and it has been sitting there mislabeled for years, shaping decisions you thought were entirely your own. Ask, before the next fear arrives, and ask it slowly enough that you actually hear the answer instead of rushing past it the way you always have. Is this actually dangerous, or is this simply uncomfortable, wearing danger's uniform because no one ever taught me to check its badge, because no one ever sat you down and told you that your body cannot always tell the difference between a bruised ego and a broken rib, and it has been treating them as the same emergency for your entire adult life. Notice something else while you're sitting with that. The men around you who seem to move through the world without this particular weight are not built differently from you. They have simply run this exact examination enough times that it has become automatic, quiet, almost invisible from the outside, which is exactly why it looks like fearlessness when it is actually just practiced discernment. You are not behind because you lack something they have. You are behind because you have never once been shown the process, and tonight is the first time anyone has actually laid it out for you plainly instead of simply telling you to be braver, as though bravery were a switch you'd simply forgotten to flip. Law 2. Named fear has edges. Unnamed fear is bottomless. This is where it gets uncomfortable in a different way. Fear left vague doesn't stay the same size. It grows, deliberately, in the dark, because vagueness is the only environment where it can expand without limit, unchecked by any actual boundary, feeding on every unrelated anxiety you happen to be carrying that week until it has swallowed the whole of your attention. The formless dread that visits you at 2 in the morning doesn't touch one part of your life. It touches all of it at once. Your career. Your worth. Your future. The people who might one day realize you were never quite what you presented yourself to be. Because you have never once forced it to say, specifically, in a complete sentence, exactly what it is actually claiming will happen if you move forward. That refusal to name it isn't caution. It's cowardice wearing caution's clothing, and some part of you has known that for a long time, has known it every single time you told yourself you were simply being prudent while quietly avoiding the one conversation that could have actually changed something. Vagueness is comfortable precisely because it cannot be tested. A fear with no edges cannot be proven wrong, and a fear that cannot be proven wrong gets to run forever, unchallenged, growing fat on your silence. Seneca did the opposite, deliberately, methodically, as a discipline rather than an accident. He named the worst outcomes. Exile. Poverty. Execution, by an emperor he once tutored as a boy, a man he had personally watched grow from a child into the kind of ruler who could end his life with a single written order. Not to frighten himself further, not to wallow in the worst case, but to strip away the fog and discover, almost every time, that the named thing was smaller than the shapeless one circling it. This is not positive thinking. Positive thinking is a lie you tell a frightened man to make him quiet for a moment before the fear returns exactly as large as before. This is closer to interrogation. You are dragging the thing into the light and demanding it explain itself in specific, falsifiable terms, because specific things have edges, and edges can be measured, and measured things, almost without exception, turn out to be survivable in a way the shapeless version never allowed you to see. Tonight, take whatever is circling in the back of your mind right now, the one you've been avoiding naming even to yourself, dressing it up in vaguer and vaguer language every time it surfaces so you never have to look directly at it. Say, out loud if you have to, in one complete sentence, exactly what you are afraid will happen. Not the feeling. The actual outcome. Watch how much smaller it gets the instant it has a shape, the instant it stops being everything and starts being one specific, nameable thing that a man can actually plan around instead of simply enduring. Law 3. You are undefeated. You are betting against your own record. Here is a number that should stop you cold. Every fear you have ever felt in your entire life has been survived. 100%. Not most. All. Every single instance, without a single exception, has ended with you still here, still breathing, still capable of listening to this sentence right now. You are, at this exact moment, standing on a flawless record stretching back to the earliest fear you can remember, and you are about to approach the next one as though the streak might finally break tonight, as though this particular fear is somehow built differently from every other one that came before it and failed to destroy you, when the evidence sitting inside your own memory, if you actually bother to consult it, says the opposite, clearly, repeatedly, without ambiguity. Here is the part that should actually disturb you more than the fear itself. You are not weighing evidence when you make these decisions. You are betting against a perfect, undefeated record because a feeling in your chest is louder in this exact moment than a lifetime of proof sitting quietly behind it. That is not caution. That is not wisdom. That is a man who trusts a passing sensation more than he trusts his own history, more than he trusts the accumulated evidence of every single day he has already lived through and come out the other side of. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to this in private, in writing meant for no one else's eyes, not for comfort, not for reassurance, but as data. An honest accounting that the current difficulty belonged to the same category as every difficulty that came before it and didn't destroy him, ruling an empire through plague, through war on multiple fronts, through the deaths of his own children, one after another, and still returning each night to the same discipline of checking the present fear against the full weight of everything he had already endured. He wasn't denying risk. He never once pretended the danger wasn't real. He was refusing to let panic outvote a track record that had already been proven, tested, and confirmed more times than he could count. You can barely remember the specific shape of the fear that stood outside that door 5 years ago, the one that felt, at the time, like the single largest thing that had ever happened to you. It's been overwritten by the simple, undeniable fact that you kept living, kept moving, kept accumulating a life on the other side of it. That erosion is not an accident, and it is not something that only happens to other men. It's what happens to every fear you actually walk through, every single time, without exception, and it is happening to the fear sitting in you tonight too, whether you walk through it or not, because time erodes the memory of fear regardless. The only question is whether you get the life on the other side of it, or simply the erosion without the growth. Consider the fear that has been sitting the longest in you, the one you inherited rather than developed, the one you can trace back further than any specific event, back to a version of yourself small enough that nobody expected him to be examining anything at all. That fear was never named for you either. It was simply absorbed, wordlessly, from watching someone else avoid naming their own, and it has been running unexamined for so long that you may have never once considered it was ever optional. Naming it now, tonight, as an adult with the capacity to do what that smaller version of you was never equipped to do, is not weakness. It is the first honest thing that fear has been asked to do in years, which is to answer for itself. Law 4. The real fear isn't the outcome. It's being seen. Now we get to the one you didn't want open tonight, the one you felt coming from the moment this began, sitting quietly underneath everything else, waiting its turn. Underneath almost everything you avoid sits a smaller, colder fear you have never said out loud to a single living person, not your closest friend, not the woman who thinks she has access to all of you, not even yourself in the privacy of your own head where you have gotten remarkably skilled at changing the subject the instant it starts to surface. That if you fail, or get rejected, or are seen struggling in front of witnesses, it will finally confirm something you already privately suspect is true about you. That you're not enough. That you were always going to be found out eventually, and every success you've had until now was simply the clock running, not the verdict changing. This isn't about the outcome. It was never about the outcome. It's about exposure, about the specific horror of being witnessed in the exact moment your carefully constructed composure finally cracks, and it is heavier, by a wide margin, than whatever practical consequence you'd name out loud if someone asked you directly what you were afraid of. This is why the relief of not trying feels so much like safety, so warm, so familiar, almost indistinguishable from actual peace. It isn't safety. It's the postponement of a verdict you've already half convicted yourself of in private, and every day you avoid the test is another day you get to keep disagreeing with it quietly, alone, where no one can prove you wrong. Or right. And that uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it is, has become more tolerable to you than the risk of a final answer, which tells you something about how little you currently trust yourself to survive that answer either way. Epictetus taught that a man's worth cannot be settled by any single outcome, no matter how much the moment insists otherwise in the instant it happens, no matter how loudly your body screams that this one failure is different from every other setback in human history. If that were false, if worth really were contingent on never failing visibly, never being seen struggling, never having a weakness exposed to an audience, then no man in recorded history would have any worth at all, because every one of them failed, in public, repeatedly, sometimes catastrophically, and remained exactly who they were afterward, no more diminished by the failure than they had been inflated by their prior successes. Name the one avoidance in your life right now that isn't really about the practical result, the one where you already know, if you're honest, that the actual stakes are small and survivable. Ask what you're actually protecting when you avoid it. And be honest, finally, after years of not being honest about this specific thing, that it's not the outcome you're protecting yourself from. It's the confirmation. Law 5. Courage is not the absence of fear. You have been waiting for a signal that isn't coming. You have been waiting, for years now, for a feeling of readiness to arrive before you act, checking for it the way a man checks a phone that never rings, convinced that this time, surely this time, the signal will finally come through. It is not coming. It was never coming. This is the part that should unsettle you most tonight, more than any of the laws before it, because it means every morning you told yourself today, once I feel ready, once the nerves finally settle, once the timing lines up the way it hasn't yet, was a morning you handed over, without resistance, to a condition that does not exist and was never going to exist, no matter how long you waited for it. Seneca said it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things remain difficult. Reverse the sentence you've been quietly living inside for years without ever examining it. The avoidance isn't protecting you from the difficulty. It's the exact thing preserving it, indefinitely, keeping it fully intact and untouched, because an unconfronted fear does not shrink with time the way you keep telling yourself it will. It calcifies. It hardens around whatever shape it had the day you first turned away from it, and it gets more expensive to face the longer you leave it standing there, accumulating interest in a currency you will eventually have to pay in full, likely at a moment you did not choose and were not prepared for. The men you call courageous, the ones whose names get repeated for generations, were not calm men in the moment it counted. They were frightened men who moved anyway, mid-fear, without waiting for the noise in their chest to end, because the noise was never going to end on its own. It doesn't end. Nobody's ever managed to wait it out successfully, because it isn't designed to be waited out. It's designed to be moved through. You act inside it, fully present with it, still shaking if that's what it takes, or you wait outside your own life indefinitely for a silence that was never scheduled to arrive, checking the horizon for a calm that isn't coming while your actual life continues to happen, or fails to happen, without you. Take the one action you've postponed until the fear disappears, the one you already know, deep down, you have been rehearsing this exact excuse for. Take a single, concrete, physical step toward it tonight, before you sleep, while the fear is still fully present in the room with you, unresolved, loud, exactly as uncomfortable as it has always been. Do not wait for it to quiet down first. It won't. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from waiting for a signal that never arrives, a fatigue that has nothing to do with physical effort and everything to do with the sheer weight of standing at the same threshold, night after night, rehearsing the crossing without ever making it. That exhaustion is not proof that you are not ready. It is proof that readiness was never the actual precondition to begin with, and every night you mistake the exhaustion for evidence of unreadiness, you extend the waiting by another full cycle, indefinitely, with no natural end point built into the pattern at all. Law 6. You have already suffered this hundreds of times. It was never real. Count, honestly, without softening the number to make yourself feel better about it, how many times you have already lived through the exact confrontation you're avoiding right now. In the shower, arguing with someone who has no idea the conversation is even happening. In traffic, rehearsing a version of events that will never occur exactly as you've imagined it. Staring at a ceiling at 3 in the morning, feeling the specific, physical humiliation in your actual body as though it were occurring in real time, your face flushing, your stomach tightening, over an event that has not taken place and, in most cases, never will take place the way you've rehearsed it. Now compare that number, honestly, to how many times the actual feared event has occurred in your real life. For most men the ratio is grotesque. Hundreds of full, vivid rehearsals against 0 real occurrences, sometimes against a single occurrence that turned out to be nothing like the version you'd suffered through in advance 100 separate times. You have already paid, in full, real physiological currency, heart rate, cortisol, the specific ache of imagined shame sitting in your chest, for a war that has not happened, and in most cases, never will happen, not the way you keep fighting it in your head. That cost was real even though the event wasn't. Your body cannot tell the difference between a rehearsal and reality, which means you have been quietly torturing yourself for years over events that exist nowhere except inside your own skull, and calling it preparation, when it was never actually preparing you for anything. It was simply suffering, repeated, for no return. Marcus Aurelius separated sharply, deliberately, as a daily discipline, between what was actually occurring in front of him and what his mind was adding to it through anticipation and imagination. Almost all of your suffering, almost all of it, is coming from the addition, not the event itself. The event, if it ever actually arrives, and it often doesn't, is almost always smaller, quieter, and more survivable than the 100 imagined versions you've already bled for in advance, alone, in silence, with nobody ever knowing the war you were fighting. Tonight, notice the specific fear you keep re-fighting on a loop, the one that returns to you at the exact same time every night like it has an appointment. Be honest, finally, about the count. How many times has it actually happened in the real world, outside your own head, versus how many times you've suffered through it only inside your own skull, alone, unwitnessed, paying a full price for a debt that was never actually owed. Law 7. The fear you keep circling marks exactly where you stopped becoming yourself. Every fear you have spent years walking around instead of walking through marks the precise coordinates of the man you claim you want to become but have been quietly, consistently refusing to meet at the appointed place. This is not random, and you have probably suspected that for a while without ever saying it plainly. You are not avoiding fear evenly, spread thin across the whole of your life in some general, diffuse caution. You are avoiding it in the same specific rooms, the same specific conversations, the same specific category of risk, over and over again, which means those rooms are not incidental. They are exactly where your next self has been standing this entire time, patient, unmoving, waiting, while you keep finding new reasons, dressed up as wisdom, to take the long way around the exact same door. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. That what stands in the way becomes the way, that the obstacle itself, examined correctly, is rarely separate from the path forward. In the case of fear specifically, the obstacle usually is the path, disguised, deliberately or not, as something to avoid rather than something to walk directly through, and the disguise works precisely because nobody ever taught you to look past it. This is why the same fear keeps resurfacing in different clothing across entirely different parts of your life, at work, in relationships, in the quiet decisions nobody else ever sees you make. It was never really about the specific conversation you're currently avoiding. It was always the same unresolved edge, wearing a new costume each time, showing up again and again, patient in a way that should honestly unsettle you, until you finally walk through it instead of around it one more time. You already know his face. The version of you that exists on the other side of this one specific fear, the one you've been circling longest. More direct. Less apologetic. Unafraid of the exact room you keep finding reasons to avoid. He is not a fantasy, and he is not some distant, unreachable ideal. He has been waiting, close enough that you can sense the outline of him on quiet nights, too far only because you have never actually walked the distance between where you're standing and where he is. Name the fear you've been avoiding longest, the oldest one, the one that predates most of the others. Ask, honestly, without flinching away from the answer this time, who has been waiting on the other side of it this entire time. Somewhere tonight, in a room you have not walked into yet, a version of a fear you have already met before is waiting to be met again, wearing a slightly different face, testing whether the last 5 years actually changed anything or whether you are still the same man who let the question run ahead of every decision without ever once dragging it into the light. That is not a threat. That is simply what happens next, the way it always happens next, whether you are ready for it or not. 7 laws. Not 7 tricks for making fear disappear, because fear was never the thing that needed removing, and any promise that told you otherwise was lying to you for your attention. What needed to change was the automatic, unexamined obedience you've been handing over, for years, to a sensation that was only ever supposed to be information. Not command. Information you were meant to consult, weigh, and then decide against if the situation called for it. Command you have been following blindly since before you were old enough to know you had a choice in the matter. The Stoics did not become fearless men, and anyone who tells you that is the goal has misunderstood the entire discipline. They became men who refused to let an unexamined feeling keep making decisions that belonged, rightfully, permanently, to their own judgment, decisions that were theirs to make and theirs alone, regardless of how loudly the fear insisted otherwise in the moment. You already have everything required to start tonight, right now, before you close this out and let the moment pass the way you have let so many moments pass before. A mind capable of cross-examining a verdict instead of simply obeying it on reflex. A perfect, undefeated, unbroken record of surviving every fear that came before this one, stretching back further than you can even remember. And a specific fear, sitting close to the surface right now, closer than it has been in a long time, marking the exact coordinates of whatever you've been postponing becoming for years. The feeling is not leaving because this ends. It is going to arrive again, soon, probably sooner than you'd like, exactly the way it always has, wearing whatever costume it wears next. The only thing different now is that you know which one of these 7 laws it's going to test first. Some part of you has known since the opening line, has recognized itself somewhere in the middle of all this, underneath the words, in a place words don't usually reach. That recognition wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a coincidence either. Nobody is coming to remove this from you. Not time. Not success. Not the version of your life you've been waiting to arrive before you finally act, the one that keeps getting postponed to next month, next year, the next stretch of calm that never actually shows up on schedule. The feeling will still be sitting there, exactly where it's always been, on the other side of everything you're currently avoiding, exactly the way it's been there on the other side of everything you've already survived and forgotten the size of. The only variable that was ever actually yours to control, the only one, out of everything in your entire life that feels uncontrollable tonight, has always been your relationship to it. If this reached something real in you tonight, something you've been avoiding looking at directly for longer than you'd like to admit, remember it before the clarity fades. Because it will fade. It always fades, the moment the screen goes dark and the room goes quiet again, and the actual test shows up without warning, exactly when you least expect it, exactly like it always has.